In the distant future, vampires rule the night, but their numbers are dwindling. One podcast is unlike all the others. Half human, half vampire. This is Lefty Speaks, the official podcast for Vampire Hunter D.
Hello, hunters, and welcome to another episode of Lefty Speaks. I'm Scott McLean. I'm here with Brandon Easton and Neal Fischer. And today we're doing a follow-up, as last time we were talking about Castlevania, its homage to Vampire Hunter D, the Symphony of the Night. And we wanted to get into more about, just video games in general, and some of the things we've loved over the years, some of the questions we've gotten on our Discord. So if you want, go check out some of the conversation there. But we gave a brief answer on our interest in video games, but also why we don't think it is currently appropriate for us to try and attempt to do anything with a video game of any sort in the Vampire Hunter D universe at the moment. The short answer was too much, too little butter spread over too much bread. If you chase everything, you get nothing. And so I think we have some recent examples of that, particularly in video games, from both the trying to do too many things to be everything to everyone, as well as how long and involved they are, which I think some people are aware of, but there's an insane amount of effort and work that goes into it, just like making an adaptation, doing particularly animation work. So we want to get into that, and historically some of our favorite games that maybe we hope someday we'll be pulling reference from to do an adaptation of the more interactive sort. So without further ado, I'm going to toss it over to Brandon, as he has some, I think, great historical examples for us, because he's someone who was responsible and kept track of his really cool stuff and didn't have it get tossed out by their parents when you moved out to college.
Well,
because I had some of the stuff you had.
Right. Well, I mean, I lost a lot of stuff because I just was irresponsible. So it wasn't parents; it was my infinite stupidity at the time to not properly take care of things.
I still blame myself because I left it unattended. So,
and mine are in a warehouse.
Mm.
So I after you posted the picture on Facebook, I was like, oh my gosh, I went like took way too much time digging through my closets, and then I realized, no, I think it's in one of the warehouses that I managed, and I'm like, well, that's a drive downtown,
Nope.
Right. Well, here's the trick. So to give everybody some context, the last time we were here, we were talking about how Castlevania franchise is so legendary and iconic, but there's some very, 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 very clear references to Vampire Hunter D sprinkled throughout not only the games, but also the Netflix animated series, which is a great show. I'm not going to hate on it. I mean, Warren Ellis, who has had some controversy, but Warren Ellis, the acclaimed comic book graphic novel creator and now showrunner, he put together one hell, no pun intended, one hell of a series, because he respected the source material 100%, while also adding his own voice and telling a very expanded narrative of the Castlevania universe. So the first thing, just to put a pin in Castlevania for now, because eventually we are going to have to talk about the animated series, but this book is absolutely fantastic. It's the art of Castlevania from Netflix, and it has all this great stuff. It has lore material, blah, 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 blah. But one thing I absolutely adore in books like this are character models.
Yeah.
So if you can see, this is Alucard, and you have to take a look at some of the Alucard designs here. It looks very familiar to some people we know, and especially when you get into some of the other artwork here. You take a look at that. Look at that. And I don't know. I can't like speak, and I don't want to be disrespectful to the creators or anything like that. I don't know if they actually sat and watched any of this stuff, but this is what he looks like in color. You know, he doesn't wear a hat, but suspiciously, if you put a hat on him, he would look like a lot of the people we know. And a lot of the monster design, which is absolutely fantastic in the series, but a lot of the mutants or whatever you want to demons mutants, they all they just seem familiar to me. You know, some of these things, and I feel like I could go through this whole book step by step by step, and I won't. And I do recommend you, if you're a fan of animation, if you're a fan of conceptual design, storyboards, it's all in here. It's some really, really cool stuff. But again, you take a look at it, and you know darn well that somebody, someplace, somewhere was even subconsciously influenced, perhaps, by Vampire Hunter D's lore and universe. So that's the first thing I wanted to put a pin in, and hopefully we will circle back. I need to finish I think it's called Nocturne, the latest Castlevania. I want to finish that, and then we could hopefully do like a jam with and maybe invite fans or somebody to come in with us so we could have like a round table. That would be
Yeah.
dope. Now the other thing before we get into the game stuff, one of my favorite systems, and we missed the last episode. I talked about the Sega Saturn, and it was a disc-based console that had the North American release had something that I'd never seen before. And there was a cartridge slot in the back where you could basically you stuck a cartridge in, special cartridge, you could play Japanese games. You didn't have to modify, you didn't have to put a chip in it like you did like back in the day, me and my friends, we'd modify PS1s and PS2s to play Japanese games. It was
Oh, good
illegal.
lord! If you messed up the soldering on that, you
I
destroyed
know.
your
Don't
console.
even get me started. Don't even get me started on that one. That's a whole other story. And we also were able to play, and this is how old school I'm going back. We were able to play Hong Kong VCDs, which were basically Hong Kong films that weren't DVD. It was on specially coded CDs, and the chip that we used for the PS1 would allow us to watch those films. So I was able to see a lot of Bruce Lee stuff in its original format, like how the Chinese Connection is actually Fist of Fury, and Fist of Fury is actually the Chinese Connection, which I didn't realize that was the flip in the name back in the day. That's a whole other story. Anyway, so first things first, I dug out some of my games. I was going to sell these. So this is Dracula X Symphony of the Night. This is the version that has Maria, Richter, and all the other characters you can play other than just Alucard. And this is complete. I still have everything, even a little slot thing that comes out of it. I still have it. And I was thinking about selling it, but I'm not going to. I did sell my Magic Knights Rare a few years ago, but this is Sega Saturn, and this is in mint condition for the most part. And a couple other things I have. You have the Gundam side stories, which I love to play. And if you're a fan of the Gundam, I mean, and these are very attractive. They don't make game stuff like this anymore. It comes very
Yeah.
flimsy now, but this is a very attractive little booklet. Has great art. It is very sturdy, and the tray is deep enough to where if you even drop it, it won't fall out. That tray actually has something called depth, you know, which a lot of these trays don't anymore. And the last thing I'll show real quick would be this crazy Evangelion alternate universe game.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Second Impression. This is really crazy because it's like this weird alternate universe where Shinji has another girlfriend, and this also comes with a little mini disc, which a lot of games did back then. And this is complete as well with the booklet. Jewel case, right? Like a lot of games come in jewel cases, but they had to for this because it came with so many other things. And on the Discord, I had posted these pictures just to get people thinking and talking about the fact that we are gamers, and all of us on this podcast at some point has owned a console, played PCs, and also play pen and paper TTRPGs and board TTRPGs. I really like the board ones a lot, especially like stuff like BattleTech and Mech Warrior and things of that nature. And the Gundam has one coming out real soon to compete with Warhammer. So that's going to be
Oh
a
yeah.
really interesting Civil War, because it's going to be, because I can't afford both. Because Warhammer is deeply expensive, but Gundam,
Yeah.
is just stepping into really uncharted territories in the Western world for tabletop RPG action. Now, with that said, real quick before I hand it off to my esteemed colleagues, we had a couple people ask, could we do a crowd fund of a potential Vampire Hunter D video game? And once we get past all the rights issues and blah, 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 there's something you have to really understand. I understand that everybody went to film school, not everybody got a computer science degree, and especially did not get a gaming degree. I understand that. I respect it. Hey, we need more plumbers. We need more everything in the world, right? But if you didn't study this, you have to understand a game might be one of the hardest things in the world to create. A video game first, right? Because I worked at Blizzard for a few years, a couple of years back. I worked on Overwatch 2 or whatever it became, and Hearthstone and an unannounced project that got canceled. That was supposed to be their big new open world thing. And games from AAA developers often do not get made. You're looking, so the biggest game, which will probably be in our lifetime, will be released next May, which is Grand Theft Auto 6, right? If you haven't watched that trailer, please do yourself a favor, go watch that trailer. That game looks ridiculous, right? That game has been in development for 10 years. They have, for all intents and purposes, a Lucasfilm level budget or greater. They have literally unlimited resources. Rockstar, you can actually say this and mean it. They have unlimited resources, and it still took 10 years because you have to develop not only for what's available, but what will be available. You start in what, 2014, 2015 to develop Grand Theft Auto 6? Who knew what the world was going to look like in 2025, 2026 now, right? And before we get into that part, the second part is tabletop stuff. I worked on a Robotech miniseries comic book a couple of years back. So there's going to be a new series of Robotech RPG hardcover supplemental books. I was supposed to put the new lore into that. Didn't work out. But here's the thing. They kickstarted it, funded it, but you know what their issue is? Printing. Right now, to print anything, especially hardcovers, mass scale hardcovers, these are things that people don't think about. It's not as simple as, you're summoning a genie and you get a RPG book. No, there's editing, proofreading, copywriting, blah, 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 blah. Levels of production just in tabletop RPGs, just pen and paper, that make things difficult. And my colleagues here, they can talk about it. So I'll step back and let them share their memories of development hell in gaming.
Well, for me, I love the idea of developing a video game because of how long and how much I've loved, video games and how it can work as a storytelling medium,
Right.
something to do with friends. I absolutely love. I remember in elementary school, in the basement with one of my friends that lived across the street, and we spent one summer learning
Right.
mapping out to beat Contra.
Wow. Wow.
And the two of us
Nice.
beat
Nice.
Contra. And we beat Super Contra. And we had a lot of fun doing it. And I that is to me a joy that I think you can share with your friends regardless of your age. And I hate the idea that people are like, "Oh, you need to grow up and be mature and quit playing games and, get a real hobby." I'm like, "You do you and I'll have fun doing what I want to do."
Mm-hmm.
It I think it can be an amazing way to connect with people. And that's part of why I loved MMOs. Now
Mm.
you did get a lot of the bad with it because there's always going to be terrible people, especially with the
Cheating.
anonymity of the internet. There will always be terrible, toxic, stupid people. That's all of life. But you will also find some absolutely amazing people. And the people I played World of Warcraft with in my
Mm.
guild in my 20s, I still talk to a number of them to this day.
Nice.
We haven't played World of Warcraft in years. We haven't played a video game together in years, but we'll still occasionally reach out and be like, "Hey, here's a here's a a dog picture." And one of them, she knows that I love corgis. So I occasionally just get a random picture of her corgi doing something silly. And I love that those kind of friendships can be fostered among people across the country, across the world. And I love what you can do with the interactivity of video games. But the downside to that is the more complicated something is to be able to do well, there's just so many more points where it can fail. And doing too much, I think, creates problems. And I'll give an example that is one that's a little close for me. Um, I've played Final Fantasy 14 for years, and prior to that, one of the games I spent a ton of time in was Destiny 2. Like, to the point that
Oh yeah, yeah.
I did
Forgot
basically
about that game.
everything in Destiny 2. The weapons, the achievements, I've got the raid jackets, the all the medals, and I quit the game in frustration because of what Bungie was doing to the game. It actually came out in a recent lawsuit that Bungie is embroiled in, that when they vaulted the content, basically they decided they didn't want to put the effort into maintaining the game with all the different expansions they had sold, so they just took them away. Like, they're vaulted. Well, they had to admit, because of this lawsuit, that the vaulted content, they can't access it anymore. They can't make it work. They broke it all. Like, wait, so you sold all this stuff to us, and for what? Oh, buying isn't owning, I guess. And that's part of my problem with video games, is even if you make something amazing, if you don't plan for the future, you can end up really upsetting a lot of your customers and driving them away when your chief concern isn't entertainment and fun anymore. And that's something that I am concerned about for us, potentially, that I don't want to fall into that trap. If my chief motivation is dollar number go up in my wallet at the expense of everything else, I think that is where we jump the shark, where we lose people. Do you lose everyone? No, you can still entertain people. Uh, you can still have a number of people who are happy, but it's like World of Warcraft in its heyday. They announced what they were going to do the next expansion, Mists of Pandaria. And when people pointed out, wait, the pandas were an April Fool's joke, and Blizzard were like, no, it's not. No, what are you talking about? No, this has always been part of the lore. And people literally pulled out screen grabs of their April Fool's post from years earlier, talking about the Pandarans and the panda. And we're like, no, you literally made an April Fool's joke. Don't try gaslighting us. And they just bored ahead with it. And like, it's like when they said, don't you have phones, about Diablo 4. If you haven't seen it, have fun, look up the controversy. Blizzard's great at having insults to their customer base. Well, their top players in the world told them, please don't make these changes. If we don't want to see this, we think it'll really hurt the game, it'll make it less fun, we won't want to be here for that. Well, they did a bunch of the things that a lot of top players said, please don't do. This will make us quit. And the guild I was in World of Warcraft, if you're unfamiliar, basically you were a part of a guild to be able to raid. The raids The big raids required 25 people to do. And some of them were 10, the big ones were 25. So you needed a pretty sizable group that you could coordinate and run. So this is a lot of effort to do. And the guild I was in, we basically had a roster of ranked players. Players ran databases where you could record your fight and your performance in the fight and upload them. And so we had a bunch of people in the top 200 players for their given role in the world. We hit a point before Pandera where half our guild quit on the same day, myself included, and never looked back at WoW again. And that led to a massive fall off in player generated content of top players. And I will give the sports comparison. You watch the NFL, unless you have a stake in it, like your kids are playing, you don't watch the JV high school football game with the fervor you watch the NFL or soccer. You go watch the LA Galaxy, not the pickup game at the park down the street. Because you want to be wowed by the best people in the world at it. And how well do you think the NBA would go if all of a sudden all the NBA players were like, nope, we're out, we're done, go watch, high school basketball? The NBA would be dead instantly. And I feel that you have that same problem when the people making the games, particularly the executives, become way too disconnected of listening to feedback. And for me, that's part of why I wanted to make the Discord, is I wanted a place that wasn't gated by algorithms like Facebook. We make a post on Facebook and it might reach 5 to 10% of the people who follow our Facebook page. I hate that. It's Facebook's way of going, well, if they're interested, great, give us money. And then more money, and then more money. So for me, the Discord is a way for us to be able to have a more direct connection to a larger group of fans than we could otherwise get through social media, and in a way that other people can also interact with. That's part of my problem with direct messages on social media, is that it's limited. And it's appropriate for some things. But if we want kind of, fan interactivity and for people to be able to give us, I will call it collaborative feedback from the community at large and other people to be able to weigh in as fans, I think that more free form environment that Discord provides is important. Because if I ever believe I've got all the answers or got it right, then I'll be the person responsible for, World of Warcraft all of a sudden having half its subscribers disappear overnight. I'd rather not be the one carrying that. So I think the fan feedback is really important, but also why I think it's important that we not get too involved right now with too many things. Final Fantasy 14, Final Fantasy 16, and a lot of players complained that Yoshi P was the director of multiple giant titles at the same time, and a lot of people complained and gave the feedback that, like, we feel these all suffered because you pushed people to do too many things at once. And Square Enix is great at corporate greed. And oh boy, the NFT games that they insisted would succeed. Well, if you look at Final Fantasy 14 right now, the player numbers are falling off a cliff. because people hated the most recent expansion. Its story is terrible. And literally I saw the player count report that some players put together. They researched it as well as can be done without getting the numbers directly from Square Enix, and it looks like this. It looks like just almost a 45-degree just whoop.
Wow.
And you have a lot of player complaints, and they had a chance. There was something that players were really excited about, and they put it into the game and did it in a way that just pissed people off even more. It's like I think there was even a thing where they said in one of the interviews that, well, we could have made it easier, but we just chose not to.
Mm.
And what they made difficult wasn't a fun challenge difficult. It was a frustrating difficult. Like, to progress in this zone, you have to unlock certain things as you go, but it's locked behind pure RNG. So there were players posting videos and streams of them being unable to progress with their friends because they had the bad luck to never get that last unlock they needed to go to the next part. And it's pure RNG. There's nothing they can do except bash their head against the brick wall and hope they get it. To me, that's terrible design.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely shows. That's a great illustration of the levels of complexity that and planning that have to go into
Mhm.
a video game. So you're not just talking like like if we're talking about making a video game of Vampire Hunter D, we have to be authentic to the original world setting, right? The universe that Kikuchi created, and the book. So that has a great you have to have a great understanding of all the characters, and obviously you can make a choice to we're only going to address this one part, right? And that helps because the world of Vampire Hunter D is immense, right? So but even that, like, how do you develop it? What do you include? What do you not include? I mean, that's just story and character elements, and
Mhm.
that's a lot of work. But then you talk about game development, like the actual how do players interact with the game? What type of game is it? What platforms can, will be able to use on it? I mean, what, how the look and the feel and the interoperability of the game. All those things are decisions you have to make. And then you have to know, can you actually, do you have the talent, the people that know how to craft and make the game like that. And then you've got money. How much money do you have to spend? How much time? And I mean, there's just so many layers to that, and that's it just shows why even big established companies that can get money from easily get money from other entities if they don't have enough still fail. I mean, my probably my biggest disappointment was when we were working on the PT back in the day with Konami and Kojima, and I mean, oh my god, it was gonna be epic. We had Guillermo del Toro was gonna be, we had Norman Reedus. I mean, it was gonna be a full reboot of the Silent Hill whole ecosystem, and we were gonna coordinate the video games and the movies. We're all gonna be together. Oh my god, the material the potential that was there, all the things, and then we already knew that Kojima and Konami weren't getting along, you know, but, I mean, like, literally, we released the PT, uh, trailer teaser, and then, like, 2 weeks later, it's not gonna happen, and, I mean, we were already starting to plan out you know, how we would reboot the whole film franchise, and, I mean, it was really and again, all everything fell apart because of a disagreement between two two individuals. Kind of two entities. That's just a disagreement, and we had all the money, we had all the talent. Davis Films. We know how to make good movies and distribute them, and it was going to be cross-platform coordination, and still it didn't work out.
Oh, to me, that reminds me of one of my, I guess, I don't know if favorite's the right word, but poignant stories out of Hollywood. Um, I don't know if people remember there was a Best Picture winner called Traffic,
Mm-hmm.
and in out of it they made that production company made some amazing movies, not just critically acclaimed, but something that had wide appeal, not just a niche thing made for the Oscars. And there were three top producers, and if you win Best Picture, you get two trophies. So two people get the name of your movie with their name as the producer engraved and get the statue. And so they had a contract over who would get the Best Picture statues, who's producer one, who's two, who's three. Well, after Traffic, they'd worked on to release the next movie that they were going to make as this production company. And when they won the Oscar, though, guy number three decided to sue number 2 and 3 because he was upset that he wasn't getting a statue, even though contractually that's what they had agreed to before making the movie. And that lawsuit ended up absolutely destroying the whole company. So you went from winning an Oscar, lining yourself up, it looked really good that they could line up for another, and oh boy.
I think gaming, all entertainment has stories like that. You
Yep.
know, I just feel like gaming, as someone who worked behind the scenes, like at a major publisher, there are a bunch of little things that happen that are political that
Mhm.
get in the way of really compelling and interesting stuff. And I guess like just to bring it back to our original concept, it's not that we don't want to do a Vampire Hunter D game, but resources are vast. I mean, Neil touched on it. When you're doing game design, you also have to think about in-game mechanics. Like, is this going to look like Devil May Cry, or is it going to look like, I don't know, Super Smash Brothers? Like, what would be the milieu, the visual milieu, and actually what will you actually be controlling? When you play Vampire Hunter D. I remember in our last conversation, I mentioned I was it Darkstalkers? No, I forgot. I keep that anyway, where you play death, after the apocalypse, and then you have but Devil May Cry, I feel, is such a close Vampire Hunter D thing, and I feel like we shouldn't, if it were to get made, we shouldn't follow that. We should have to do something very new, especially the fact that D has left hand. And when we think about that old PS1 game that did not work very well, which we talked about last time. And I think on the Discord, people have been posting clips. I posted one. Some other people posted clips a while ago. And when you look at the walkthrough, how hard it is to get anything done in that game is why probably no one ever made another Vampire Hunter D video game, as opposed to, let's say, the Metroidvania version
Yeah.
of how clean that is. And I feel like decisions like that are what makes or breaks a video game franchise. Do you want it to be 2D side scroller, or do you want it to be immersive? Like I forgot the name of the term when you're looking down from behind. There's a video game
Third
term.
person.
No, but no, there's another name for it. It's not quadrilateral. It's like there's a term for when you have the camera mounted at a 45-degree angle behind the character. But there's another name for it. It is third person, but I
But like
forgot
like an overhead.
Yeah,
it's
I know what you're
overhead film.
talking about. I don't know if there's a technical term for it, since I've never made a
Well, there
video
was
game,
because
but yeah.
we used the
I'm
nebulous
sure there.
area.
I'm sure there is.
I
Yeah.
forgot what it was, but all those decisions matter because there are people who, for example, I had a friend, well, a video game buddy, I should say. He could not play a game that was not a first-person shooter. His brain simply could not process anything outside of Halo or Call of Duty, which is fine. But if you wanted to play anything else with him, you couldn't play World of Warcraft. You couldn't even play Diablo, you know, and you definitely couldn't play something like Front Mission or
Mhm.
Super Robot Wars, or what's the little one? It was a tank game where you did the Advance Wars. Like he couldn't handle the isometric view. That's what it was called. He couldn't handle the isometric view because he couldn't process it. So I feel that when people are clamoring for all these products, you really got to understand. It's like when we talk about the novels, the movies, it is a multi-tiered, very complicated process that doesn't happen overnight. And if we started on a Vampire Hunter D video game on July 1st, 2025, when we're recording, incidentally, we would not probably see it until 2028 or 29 or even 30. I mean, that's how long it would actually take just to get things going. Not to mention, you have to make a decision. Is it text based or will we have voice actors? You
Yeah, I mean,
know?
is it a triple A? Is it a big triple A
Hmm.
game? Like Assassin's Creed, or is it?
Right,
I mean, is it linear? I mean, there's so many choices to make, and obviously that's based on what type of partnerships. I mean, is it a Sony exclusive? I mean,
hmm
there's partnerships that can get involved that will help you fund it. If you
hmm
kickstart it, then it's like, okay, I mean, like, you're probably hoping at least you can release it on Steam. I mean, there's lots of decisions, and that's, and those layers are important because it's like, well, the best way visually, is one thing. The best way for the players to interact with the game might be a different thing than what you really want visually to fit the feel of the game. And then
right.
you have the money people involved and how you're going to distribute it might want something else. So, and
Right.
that's just three. Those are just three decisions out of probably another 30 more that you have to know when you start making the game,
You-
to really, yeah.
Thank you for listening to Lefty Speaks, the official Vampire Hunter D podcast, hosted by Brandon Easton, Neal Fischer, and Scott McLean. This podcast is created by Unified Pictures and Nine Realms. Narration by Lauren Evallen-Muller. Recording and editing by Nine Realms. Produced by Scott McLean and Ian E. Muller. Based on the works created by Hideyuki Kikuchi. Happy hunting.